Chapter 2: The Caribbean. Carl and Susan looked at the strange man in front of them. Finally, Carl managed to speak. "The 17th century? Go back? You mean you're really Eric L. Kraken?" he asked. The man said nothing. He was attempting to use the watch. Carl moved closer. The man looked like an old pirate. He wore old black clothes like a pirate from the Caribbean. A pirate like those characters in legends and books. "Can it be true?" asked Carl. Finally, the man looked at him and answered, "Yes, that's me." Now Carl understood. The watch really did have strange powers. "So the legend is true," he said. "What legend?" asked Eric. "The legend about your watch." Eric looked at Carl and Susan. "How do you know about my watch?" he said. Susan answered, "It's written as a legend in our book." "In a book, you say?" Eric said with a smile. "Huh, so I'm famous. Good." "No, not you exactly, just your watch." Eric walked across the beach. He was thinking. He looked at his watch and said, "The watch is mine, but I didn't buy it. I found it. I took it from another pirate." "Another pirate?" said Carl. "Yes, a dead pirate." Eric laughed. Then he became serious. "I don't know who he was. No one does. But I got this. It's mine." He started playing with the watch again. Carl watched Eric. He was attempting to use the watch, but it wasn't working. Then Carl realized something. Eric L. Kraken had only found the watch. He didn't know how it worked. Eric didn't know why the watch had such strange powers either. Carl looked at the pirate and said, "Eric, do you know how the watch works?" "Of course I do," Eric shouted. Then he looked at Carl again. "All right," he said, "I don't know how it works. I think there are different factors involved. Sometimes I hold it in my hand and it takes me forward in time, like it did here. Then, exactly 7 hours later, I hold it in my hand again and I return to my time. I don't know what factors start and stop it." Eric paused. "But why do you do it?" "I like to see how things have changed. There are no more pirates. They're just tall buildings everywhere. And did you know they are now flying machines? Unbelievable." Carl and Susan smiled. It seemed a little crazy. Eric didn't know much about the current world. Eric looked at the watch again. Then he turned away and shouted, "Now leave me alone. It's almost time. 6 hours and 58 minutes. Soon I can return to my time and place, and I can't be late." Carl and Susan looked at each other. What do you think, Susan? Asked Carl quietly. What are you asking? Do you want to go to the 17th century Caribbean? Susan thought. Come on, it will be fun, said Carl. Don't pressure me. Susan thought a moment more. Finally, she said, Okay, let's go. Carl and Susan approached Eric L. Kraken and said, We want to go with you. No, said Eric. What do you mean no? Demanded Carl. I mean no, said Eric. He simply looked at Carl. But we want to see how things have changed too. We know the modern world. We want to see how things were, like you want to see how things will be. Suddenly, Eric got a strange look in his eyes. It was like he had an idea. Oh, wait, you know the modern world. He paused. Okay, you come with me. I may have a task for you. Okay? Okay, replied Carl. So, do we all just touch the watch? Yes, just put your hands on the watch. Get in position. Hurry. Susan, Carl, and Eric all touched the watch. Suddenly, they were transported to the Caribbean in the 17th century. The night turned to day, and they were in a pirate camp. The process was surprisingly easy. Carl and Susan released the watch. Several pirates were looking at them. One of them was a fit man with dark skin and long hair. He approached Eric L. Kraken. Good morning, Captain. You're finally back. Then he looked at Carl and Susan and added, And you've brought guests. Eric smiled. Yes, Frank, I did, he answered. Then he turned to the other pirates. Listen up, he shouted. These people here are... Eric L. Kraken paused. He looked at his guests and asked, what are your names? Carl and Susan, they answered. That's right, man. These people are Carl and Susan. The pirates didn't pay much attention. Crazy things had often occurred due to the watch. Yes, Carl and Susan, Eric continued with a strange smile. And they are going to help us. They will help us win today. This got the attention of the man. The pirates shouted happily. Win, said Carl. Win what? Eric turned to Carl and Susan. Then he turned back to his man. You are going to help us win the battle, Carl and Susan. Battle, cried Susan. What battle? They won against the English ships. What? You didn't say anything about that, she replied. Eric L. Kraken simply ignored them. Back to work, he called to his men. Then he and the pirate called Frank went to his tent. Carl and Susan were left alone. Carl and Susan stood and looked at the sea. It was filled with pirate ships. A moment later, Frank returned. I'm sorry, he said. What? Why are you sorry? Susan asked. Because Eric is crazy. Susan and Carl looked at each other. Crazy? Asked Carl. Crazy. Frank paused and looked at them. Completely. I see, replied Carl. And why do you say that? Because he thinks he can use you, use us, to stop the English ships. The English know about the watch. Their aim is to get it at any price. They attack us every night. Eric must stop them. He claims you can help. There were battle noises far away. The first ships were under attack. The English were coming. How does Kraken want us to help? Asked Carl. He claims you two know what will happen. You live in the future. No. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know anything about this battle. We only know about the watch. And even that's just a legend. Frank looked down. Eric will be disappointed. He will do anything to keep that watch. If you can't help him, he won't need you anymore. He gave them a serious look. Things might get ugly. Susan and Carl looked at each other in fear. What can we do? Asked Susan. You have to steal the watch, explained Frank. If the captain doesn't have the watch, there won't be a fight. Okay, when? This afternoon there will be an important battle. Captain Al Kraken is going to bring a lot of ships to the fight. You must take the watch from him. Then go back to your time and never return. Frank returned to Eric's tent. Carl and Susan sat on the beach. What can we do? I'm just a watchmaker. You're a security guard, said Carl. How can we steal from a pirate? We have to find a way, replied Susan. Wait, I have an idea,